It's 3 a.m. The room is dark. The world is quiet. Everyone around you is sleeping, yes, and yet your mind is running at full speed. You're replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, rewinding every word, analyzing every pause, wondering what they really meant, wondering what you should have said. And just when you think you've reached a conclusion, your brain resets and the loop begins again. This is overthinking. And if this feels familiar, you are not alone. Overthinking is not the same as thinking deeply. Deep thinking is purposeful. It moves forward, generates solutions, and eventually arrives somewhere. Overthinking, by contrast, is circular. It creates the feeling of mental productivity while producing nothing but exhaustion. Psychologists define it as repetitive, uncontrollable cognitive activity focused on problems, past events, or future uncertainties, with no resolution in sight. The question is, why does the brain do this? To understand overthinking, you must first understand the brain's oldest priority: survival. Deep within your brain sits the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that has one primary function: detect threats and trigger a response. In prehistoric times, this system kept humans alive. A snapping twig in the forest meant danger. Hesitation meant death. So the brain evolved to overanalyze environmental signals because missing a threat was far more costly than imagining one that wasn't there. The problem? Your brain cannot fully distinguish between a predator in the wild and a difficult email from your boss. To the amygdala, social threats, professional uncertainty, and unresolved conflict register with similar urgency. So it does what it was built to do, and it keeps scanning, keeps replaying, keeps searching for the danger so it can protect you. You are not broken. You are running ancient software in a modern world. Here is where it becomes psychologically fascinating and deeply frustrating. Overthinking disguises itself as problem solving. When you replay a situation repeatedly, your brain generates a quiet but convincing narrative. If I think about this long enough, I will figure it out. I will be prepared. I will be safe. This is the illusion of control. In reality, most overthinking is directed at things that either cannot be changed, the past, or cannot be fully predicted, the future. The mind is investing enormous energy into territory where it has no real authority. And yet, stopping feels impossible because stopping feels like surrendering control. And this is where the trap locks shut. Overthinking produces anxiety. Anxiety signals to the brain that a threat is unresolved. An unresolved threat demands more thinking. More thinking generates more anxiety. The cycle becomes self-sustaining, a mental engine running on its own exhaust. The harder you try to force your mind to stop, the louder it becomes. So, if willpower alone cannot break this loop, what can? Here is the truth that most people are never told. Overthinking is not a flaw in your character. It is not a sign of weakness. It is not evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you. It is a learned pattern, shaped by experience, reinforced by habit, and maintained by one of the most deeply human fears that exists: the fear of not knowing. And what is learned can be unlearned. Psychologists have identified a specific trait that sits at the core of chronic overthinking. It is called intolerance of uncertainty. Some minds, more than others, are wired to find ambiguity genuinely unbearable. When an outcome is unclear, when a relationship feels undefined, when the future refuses to reveal itself, these minds do not rest. They work. They generate scenario after scenario, question after question, attempting to manufacture certainty in a world that simply does not offer it on demand. But here is the profound shift in perspective that changes everything. Certainty is not a requirement for peace. It is only a preference. The moment you stop demanding that your mind resolve every unknown before allowing yourself to feel calm, the grip of overthinking begins to loosen. Not immediately, not perfectly, but genuinely. One of the most powerful tools clinical psychology offers is a technique from acceptance and commitment therapy known as cognitive diffusion. Most people who overthink are completely fused with their thoughts, meaning they experience every thought as absolute reality, as urgent truth demanding immediate attention. Cognitive diffusion teaches something radically different. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. When your mind says you embarrassed yourself in that meeting, diffusion teaches you to reframe it. I notice my mind is telling me I embarrassed myself in that meeting. This single shift creates psychological distance. The thought loses authority. It becomes something passing through your awareness rather than something defining your reality. You cannot always control what your mind produces, but you can change your relationship with what it produces. That distinction is everything. Research also supports a surprisingly structured approach called scheduled worry. Rather than fighting intrusive thoughts throughout the entire day, which paradoxically strengthens them, you designate a specific window, 15 minutes, same time each day. When overthinking arrives outside that window, you acknowledge it and deliberately postpone it. What this does is extraordinary. It teaches the brain that these thoughts are not emergencies. They have a time and place. They do not own you. But perhaps the deepest antidote to overthinking is the simplest and the hardest. Coming back to the present moment. Overthinking lives exclusively in two places: the past that cannot be rewritten and the future that cannot be fully controlled. The present moment is the one territory where overthinking has no jurisdiction. Grounding practices, deliberate breathing, physical sensation awareness. These are not simply relaxation techniques. They are neurological interruptions. They physically redirect the brain's attention from the imagined to the actual. Action is also presence. Doing something, anything, pulls energy from rumination and places it into reality. The mind that is genuinely engaged cannot simultaneously spiral. Movement, creation, conversation. These are not distractions from your problems. They are proof that life exists beyond the loop. You are not your worst-case scenario. You are not the conversation you keep replaying. You are not the mistake you cannot release. You are not the future disaster your mind has already drafted in vivid detail. Awareness is the first act of liberation, and you have already begun simply by asking why. Now, before you go, here is a question worth sitting with. If you knew for certain that everything would work out in the end, what thought would you finally allow yourself to let go of today? Write it down, say it out loud, or simply let yourself feel the answer. Because sometimes the most powerful thing an overthinking mind can do is pause, breathe, and choose to trust itself.